If we want to get the essence of life, we have to ask questions. What often happens in life is as we grow up, we stop asking questions. As we grow up, we stop challenging the world. As we grow up, we tend to just accept things for granted without asking the question, why? Have you noticed kids, they always ask, why? And then when you give them an explanation, they say, but why? And then you say, that's just the way it is. And then they say, but why? Einstein, he said, never stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. And therefore, those who are passionately curious, those who are asking the most questions, the deepest questions, the questions that are hard to ask, those are the ones that uncover the deepest insights. So much, Raja, for your kind introduction. Thank you all for coming this evening. It's a real honor to be here in Dallas. And tonight we have, I think, a topic that will be relevant for all of you. Live, love, let go. And we'll be looking at this topic from the lens of the Bhagavad-gita. Just to kind of get a show of hands, who here has never read the Bhagavad-gita? Just to get a kind of sense. Okay, some of you, okay. Thank you, yes, no problem. So we'll kind of navigate you a little bit through this ancient wisdom text, see what kind of insights it has to offer you. Today I'm going to keep it quite interactive. I know it's the end of the day, and you've probably been hearing lecturers all day, so I won't give you a long speech. But at certain points I'm just going to break up and just ask you to discuss with the person next to you some points which might be relevant to all of you. And really I want to begin tonight by asking you a question, and you can just discuss this with the person next to you just for 1 minute. Sometimes we learn through books, sometimes we learn through teachers, sometimes we learn in lecture theatres at events like this. But one of the most powerful ways of learning is learning from experience, learning from what you're going through, the emotions, the events, the experiences of life. And so I just want you to just for a moment discuss with the person next to you. If you know them, great. If you don't know them, even better. And just talk to each other and just share, what is life teaching you at the moment? What are you going through? What are you experiencing that is showing you or teaching you something about life? It could be to do with living. It could be to do with loving. I know you'll have lots to say about love. And it could be to do with letting go. So can I give you a few moments to do that? Yeah? And then we'll just ask you to feedback. Go for it. So can we kind of get some feedback from you guys? It would be good to know like what's going on in your lives. Anyone have anything that's teaching them about letting go? Anything like that? Yeah, okay, we have someone there. We're coming around with the mic. Raj is doing his exercise today. I told him he has to speed over.
Turn it on. Hare Krishna Maharaj. So Maharaj, life is teaching me to basically let go of all the anxieties and do whatever responsibilities that I have in a detached manner, so that whatever the outcome may be, whether any, let's say if I'm organizing an event, or if I'm working on my research work or everything, if it goes successful or failure, at least I am doing my efforts, and that's what matters. The result doesn't matter, because most of the time what I'm seeing is failure. So
okay, so life is teaching you to be detached from the results and just do the best you can. And whether you fail or you're a success, in the result of it, be satisfied that you tried your best. Amazing. Anyone, put your hand up if you'd like to also imbibe that kind of mood. Okay, everyone else wants to just be a success. Okay, excellent. Yeah. Anything else that life is teaching you? What are you going through right now that's awakening, some kind of insight in your heart, in your mind? Don't be shy. We can all learn from each other. Yeah, okay, yeah. Thank you for being brave.
I think one thing life is teaching me right now, it kind of have to preface it with something. So I've had sleep issues for like 7-8 years.
Okay.
And I finally found like a solution. The solution is like THC gummies, like weed gummies. So I'll be going. so when yeah, it works. It'll put me to sleep. So I'll go to sleep like really happy. I wake up really happy, and like when I go to work, I'll be really happy. But I think what it helped me realize is that there's a lot of things you can appreciate in like the ordinary, boring moments of life. Like even in traffic, when you're just driving around, you can look around and see other people in other cars, and you're watching like a movie. But I feel like you can see like a lot of really cool things that we don't pay attention to because it's not flashy. And I feel like I've started to see like the cool part of the everyday life.
Amazing, that's a great one. Of course, the weed one was good as well. But specifically, the second one was very interesting. Finding beauty in the boredom of life. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the theory of boredom. Have you ever heard of this? Basically, 50 years ago, people used to actually get bored. Nowadays, when people are bored, you know what they do, right? They're scrolling, right? So they say nowadays people don't get bored because as soon as there's boredom, they fill it with devices. But 50 years ago, people used to get bored, but it was a great thing. Because when they would actually get bored, they would actually begin thinking about life. And that space to actually think about life, to appreciate what's around you, to see the beauty in those things which otherwise in the treadmill of life you just walk by, you begin appreciating a lot of things around you. So boredom is actually has its role to play in life. Thank you so much. That's a great one. Anyone else? What are you learning from life? 3 is the magic number, so we'll get one more. Yeah.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. One of the things that I'm learning right now.
You can use both.
I have to use both?
Double power.
Is integrating this understanding that everything that I'm experiencing in any moment, even if it's making me uncomfortable or if it's making me distressed or it's really confusing, it's because it's exactly what I need. And I know that, and I'm working on remembering that in those moments where it is more difficult. Because even all the wonderful things, like I get to experience those because that's what I need in that moment. But it's a lot easier to be appreciative of that and for that when the feelings are good.
Yeah, that's a beautiful one. Yeah, we often talk about that in spiritual circles, how one of the great arts of life is to learn to become comfortable with the uncomfortable. And you're like, but I don't like the uncomfortable. But actually, if we reflect back on our life, then what we'll actually see is the most uncomfortable, the most difficult, the most trying moments of our lives were often the times when we realized the most growth. And through that struggle, through that endeavor to kind of navigate that situation, we became wiser, we became stronger, we became more aware and realized about the world around us. And so the kind of default setting of most people is as soon as an uncomfortable situation comes, let me just somehow dull it out. And of course, there is something to be said for finding peace of mind, but we should also learn to grow, because all these situations don't just go through problems, but grow through problems. Sorry, that was a bit cheesy, but add it in there. There was one more here. You will have you as well. Thank you.
So right now I'm learning how to be more independent in life. So I just came to the university like 1 month ago. So I left my family, friends, all the connections back in India, and I came to an
And your
entirely-
mom's cooking.
Oh yeah, definitely. So building new connections, exploring
right.
new places. So trying to be more independent with life.
Yeah, and independence, like when I was 18, I also went to university. I studied at UCL London, and I lived out in my first year, and just being independent, just being away from the normal noises, opinions, the normal habitat is very, very good. It shows you a different side to yourself. So yeah, independence is a good thing. Yeah, great. So just the reason I'm beginning with this exercise is just to share with you that sometimes we can learn so much about life by just taking some time to sit down and reflect on all the things that we're going through and what we can learn from those instances. They say between the age of 0 and 25, we learn through education. And therefore, age and wisdom are correlated. In other words, an 18-year-old is always wiser than an 11-year-old because they're learning through an educational system. But it's said that from the age of 25 to 75, there's actually no correlation between age and wisdom. In other words, it's not that a 70-year-old is always wiser than a 30-year-old. Because after the age of 25, you don't learn through an educational system. You learn through experience. But just experience? Because a 70-year-old has more experiences than a 30. So is it just experience that you learn from? Experience that's reflected upon. And most people, most of us, life is so busy that we don't reflect on life. And therefore, I'm just beginning by opening that up with you. Today we want to share with you insights through the lens of an ancient book known as the Bhagavad-gita. This is an ancient scene from 5,000 years ago. It's a battlefield. It's a literal place. You can actually go to this place even today. It's called Kurukshetra. And it's said that on this battlefield 5,000 years ago, a huge war, a huge battle, a kind of a family feud of incredible proportions was about to take place. And right in the middle of the battlefield stood Arjuna. He's the warrior on this chariot. He was like the star player, the kind of the Messi or someone like that, He was the one who everyone was watching. Everyone was thinking like he's the person who the outcome of this battle is resting upon. He was successful. He was able. He had achieved so many things. He was basically like the top man in all ways. And what happened at the beginning of the battle is just as it was about to commence, he had a moment in which he began to have doubts. Sometimes we have doubts in life. Sometimes we're not sure of the direction we're going in. Sometimes we're not sure of the decisions that we've made. Sometimes we're not sure that, what I'm doing, is it really going to make me happy? And so he came to the middle of the battlefield, and his driver was Krishna. And what they did in the middle of the battlefield, the first thing they did is they just began looking around and just observing what was going on here. And in that moment, as Arjuna began observing everything, a flood of questions came to his mind. If we want to get the essence of life, we have to ask questions. What often happens in life is as we grow up, we stop asking questions. As we grow up, we stop challenging the world. As we grow up, we tend to just accept things for granted without asking the question, why? Have you noticed kids, they always ask, why? And then when you give them an explanation, they say, but why? And then you say, that's just the way it is. And then they say, But why? Einstein, he said, never stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. And therefore, those who are passionately curious, those who are asking the most questions, the deepest questions, the questions that are hard to ask, those are the ones that uncover the deepest insights. And therefore, that was Arjun's good quality. He began asking many questions. And Krishna, in reply, began giving many, many different answers. And this dialogue became famed as the Bhagavad-gita. Gita means a song, and Bhagavat means divinity or the supreme. And therefore, it's essentially a song with divinity, a conversation with divinity. Here you can see it's written in Sanskrit, which is one of the ancient languages. Sanskrit is said to be the mother of all languages. So even if you see a lot of Indo-European languages today, they're derivations from Sanskrit. And the conversation is not long. It's just 700 verses. But in that back and forth, they cover a lot of ground. And so even today, people read the Bhagavad-gita. It's actually the third biggest circulated book in the world. The first one is the Bible, and the second one is Harry Potter. So the Bhagavad-gita comes in there at number 3. We need to distribute more copies to change that fact. Not that we have anything against Harry Potter, of course. So the Bhagavad-gita could be seen in many, many ways. I was fortunate when I was 15 years old. I also had a flood of questions which started coming to my mind. And so at the age of 15, I picked up a copy of the Bhagavad-gita. And I remember going home that day thinking, like, with great anticipation, thinking like, okay, this is it. Now all the answers, the mysteries of the universe will be revealed to me. And so I got home as a 15-year-old, I opened it up, and after one page I closed it because it just went like vroom, like just went over my head. Quite a complex book, not the easiest to understand. But over the years, over 25 years, I've been studying it now, and you begin to see how it's actually a genius book. And today I'm just going to show you one lens through which you can see what the Bhagavad-gita teaches, and it's going to kind of lead into our discussion today. One of the ancient teachers, he says the Bhagavad-gita is actually like a jewel box. And he says a jewel box has 3 parts to it. There's a base, there's a jewel, and then there's a lid. And what he says is that the Bhagavad-gita has 18 chapters, and the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita are considered the base of the jewel box. Because what the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita deal with is something called karma yoga. Right? You've all heard of karma, right? Yeah, you've all heard of karma. They say there's a new restaurant in town, it's called Karma. But there's no menu, you get what you deserve. So you know karma, the idea that every time we do an action, there's a reaction. And there's a law, universal laws which are governing our future. So the basis of the Bhagavad-gita is karma yoga. Karma yoga basically means the art of how to live in this world but not be influenced by it, and the art of how to live in this world and navigate all of the different things that you have to do and ultimately awaken a higher spiritual consciousness. Life is not always easy to lead. There are so many complexities, there are so many things which make it difficult. So the yoga of living, karma yoga. And then our commentator, what he says is that the jewel, which is the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita, is all about the yoga of love, how to love. Bhakti is a Sanskrit word, and it literally means devotion, an outpouring of the heart. So what we desire is not just to live successfully in this world. All of us want to be successful. But what the Bhagavad-gita explains is you can learn to live in this world and even be successful, but until and unless you have relationships, until and unless you have meaningful connections with people, you won't actually feel full satisfaction and complete fulfillment in your heart. And so the whole middle 6 chapters are about love and how to find love. And the final 6 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita, which are like the lid, the great teacher says, is basically the yoga of letting go, the yoga of detachment. It's called Jnana Yoga in Sanskrit, which literally means the yoga of wisdom. But when we have higher wisdom, we learn to let go of things that are holding us back. At some point we realize holding on means holding back. And therefore, when we learn to let go of certain things, then actually we move forward in our life in a faster way. And so that is a great art. So what the Bhagavad-gita basically explains is that most people in the world don't know how to live, navigate this world. Even if they do, they don't know how to love, because most people are experiencing frustrated love. And even if they know that, they don't know how to let go, because there are things which are constantly holding us back. And so today we're just going to explore what does it mean to live, love, and let go according to the Bhagavad-gita. So let's begin with living. Karma yoga is the science of how to live in this world. I'm just going to ask you guys a question, and you can just feel free to answer. If I was to ask you the question, what's the difference between existing and living? Are they the same? Are they different? Think about your own life. Do you feel like you're existing? Or do you feel like you're living? And if I was to ask you, how would you know? What are the characteristics of both of them? How would you distinguish them? Can anyone give me any ideas? Yeah.
I think it's about like the range of emotions you go through in life. For living, if you go through a certain range of emotions, like a lot of sadness and a lot of joyousness, that would be a good example of living. Versus existing is like you're stale. You don't feel emotions. You just kind of just do life and get a job, work the job, then go home. And also living is about like trying to realize your soul as well. So like if you do happen to realize your soul, like every moment will become more magical, you don't have to like experience like some nice place to feel good. You're just happy with where you're at. Like every moment you will feel blissful, and every like step you take will feel really good to you.
Amazing. Call him up on the podium. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, existing is almost like a robotic life. We're kind of just doing activities, but there's no real movement of the heart. We're not emotionally involved. Have you ever felt sometimes your day is just about doing tasks, but you're not emotionally involved in it? You don't almost relish what you're doing. It just seems to be just a treadmill. Whereas in living, you feel some movement of the heart. And then you mentioned the word soul. So you're saying living is to do with a deeper part of your identity, whereas existing is just about the body, the physical needs, a house, a shelter, food, money. But living means to interact with a deeper part of your identity. Thank you so much. Very good. Yeah. Anyone else want to share? What does it mean for you? What do you think is the difference between? Yeah.
Very similar to what he said, but also I would say existing would be more like just going with the flow of things, not taking charge. Obviously, there's only so much you can influence, having limited capacity, but still just going with the flow. And then living would be having goals, making conscious choices and decisions, and trying to experience life as it comes, trying to be alive. Basically, just being conscious at every step of the way.
Yes, thank you so much. It's a great experiment. You can do it in your own time. Look at all the decisions you made in your life, the big ones, and ask yourself, did you really make that decision? You're going to be like, yeah, obviously I made that decision. Ask yourself closely, did I make that decision? Or was something or someone or a situation influencing me to make that decision? How much have I consciously made decisions in my life? Or do I think I'm making decisions but actually just going with the flow of where life takes me? That could be a very introspective point to ask. Yeah. Anything else that comes to your mind? Living, existing, what's the difference between them? Yeah.
I think the difference for like existing versus living is existing is kind of like, it's very similar to what they both said, is like doing what's expected of you, right? Like finish your education, go do the thing, get the job, work the 9 to 5, get married, like do the exact thing of what's expected for you, versus living is kind of saying, this is what I want for myself, this is what like makes me passionate, what like lights my soul on fire and makes me want to do the things that make me like excited to wake up in the morning instead of following a precise schedule of just like this perfect like cookie cutter life.
Cookie cutter life, yes, very good. Yes, to live means to find passion, to find purpose. You talked about getting up in the morning. They say the best alarm clock in the morning is purpose. So when we have a North Star, when we have something great that we're trying to achieve, something that has captured our imagination, they say the great art of life is find something bigger than yourself and then dedicate yourself to it. And so when we have that kind of purpose, then we're really living. Otherwise, we're just kind of going through the motions. Yeah. One more? Anyone else? Yeah. Okay. There you go. Our oldest member.
The difference between living and existing is, for example, this pen just exists, but like people actually live.
Sorry, can you say that again? That sounded very dynamic, but I didn't hear it.
The difference is that like things that don't actually live like are like this pen. Like they can't actually
Okay. All right, I see. You're saying existing is matter, it's dead, it is inert. But living is something alive. Do you think it's possible to be living but dead? You think it's possible to be living but dead? Yeah. You think so? Yeah. Maybe they say most people die after 75. Most people enter their grave after 75, but they're dead by 25. Because there comes a certain point in most people's life where they stop learning, they stop growing, they stop evolving, and all these things we're talking about. And therefore, practically, although living is dead, because life means growth, exploration, discovery. So yeah, why am I saying all of this to you? Because the first thing that Krishna and Arjuna have a conversation about in the Bhagavad-gita is what does it actually mean to live? And Krishna begins opening up to Arjuna a higher concept of what it actually means to live, a higher purpose. Krishna begins to explain that everything you're doing, Arjuna, on a day-to-day level are not just acts that you're just getting through the day, but those acts, if directed for a higher purpose, connected in something greater, can become inspiring, empowering, uplifting. Krishna is basically giving Arjuna a vision for how to actually conduct his daily life. And therefore, when we study these chapters of the Bhagavad-gita, we begin to explore our own hearts and lives and ask ourselves the hard question: am I living, or am I just existing. And what we do often as monks is we actually ask ourselves this question on a regular basis. Because it's not that once you're living, you're just living all the time. We can very, very easily get back into the mode of existing. And therefore, to live purposefully, we have to be conscious about it. And therefore, it may be an exercise to constantly look at our lives and ask ourselves, if I was to analyze my life, is it more on the left column or is it more on the right column? One footnote I want to add here is that the left column is not necessarily bad. Sometimes there are things that we just have to do. Sometimes we do need security. Sometimes we do just need a break and an escape. But that cannot be the goal of life. We cannot feel that that's an achievement or an end in itself. That has to lead to something higher and more meaningful. And so the first thing that Krishna opens up in the Bhagavad-gita is what it actually means to live with purpose. And if you live with purpose, this is what Krishna calls karma yoga. And so this is one of the first teachings that come up. In the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna is talking about love. Love is probably one of the most elusive things in the world. And if you don't believe me, just look at what everyone's singing about in the charts. Because it's often all about frustrated love. Most people today, their relationships are falling way short of what they wanted and expected and had hoped for in their life. Most people just don't know how to find love. And now, here is the monk going to tell you how to find love. Not me, Krishna. But before I talk about that, I'll show you have a look at this, it might be interesting for you. We have different relationships in our life. Relationships, some are loving, some are a little less than loving. Have a look at this. This is the average time you'll spend with your family as time goes by. The bottom is your age. As your age moves on, the time you spend with your family, naturally it goes down. Okay. At the end of this, I'm just going to ask you what thoughts come to your mind. Yeah. Time spent with your partner. This is how it usually works over the course of someone's life. Yeah. It usually peaks about 69, and then it goes down. Time spent with children. Yeah, once they find a job, find a partner, find their life, then they're living their life, and then eventually that time goes down. What about time spent with friends? Even that seems to go down. With time, everyone moves in their own direction. Life takes its course for everyone. We lose touch. What about time spent with those who you work with? This is the one you're probably happy about, It's like, yeah, great, Even that, once you retire, everyone, they were colleagues, you worked with them. But then what about time spent alone? That one goes up. So this is the average of how people will spend their time. In other words, as time goes by in your life, it's just the law of nature that everyone will spend more and more time alone. Anyone want to reflect on this? Anything that comes to your mind, your heart when you see this? What does this, this is just reality, this is just life, this is what happens. Is there anything you can learn from this, or any emotions or feelings that this gives you? Yeah. Can I get the mic here?
It depends on what you do with your alone time.
Yeah.
You could read Harry Potter all day, or you could read the Bhagavad-gita, or you could really reflect on the quality of your life. And if it's not the way you thought it would be, maybe you could make a change. Someone could make a change for the better.
Yeah.
And I just would like to add that we have a wonderful relationship with our sons and our grandchildren. And our little granddaughter, we were going on a bus in San Miguel, and she was sad because the other grandkids went back to Denver. And so I took her for an ice cream, and then we took a bus. And I said, well, Serja, you're sad. Why don't we just chant Hare Krishna? And so she started singing the whole mantra beautifully. And I said, well, I have a plan. We'll take buses everywhere, and you can sing, and I can distribute books. And she thought that was a good idea. Okay, so yeah. I think it depends on the quality of relationships in your life that determine
how much time and how bound together you'll be. Thank you so much, yeah. So time alone, it depends how you spend it, what you do with it. You can see it as something scary, or you can see it as something full of potential that can help you to grow, develop. Yeah, good. Yeah. Okay. Here at the back.
I think that whenever you're young, like friendships, family, partners, these things the emotions tend to be amplified more at those younger ages. So it's all fine and well that you're having these relationships, and that's why that's a measure of happiness whenever you're younger. But I think as you tend to grow older, you try to find a deeper meaning of life. Only if you're empty deep inside, that's the only time being alone will be a bad thing necessarily. But if you're filled with life within you, you won't feel that sense of aloneness within you as you get older, which is not a bad thing. Like it says, it's not a bad thing that you're alone as you get older and older.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, what's coming out from, and I'm sure all of you can relate to this, that most people are scared of being alone. Because being alone for them means loneliness. And loneliness is depressing. But for another person who knows how to utilize time alone, who knows the potentiality of having that space in their life, being alone is not called loneliness, it's called solitude. And solitude can be empowering. Solitude can be uplifting. Solitude can help you to find yourself. Most of the time, what people do in the world is because they're scared of solitude, in order to fill that gap in their life, what they instead do is they jump into relationships. But when you jump into relationships without being full in yourself, without understanding who you are, without connecting with your own deeper self, you can't really have a deep relationship with anyone else. And therefore, even in the ancient system of spiritual progression, everyone spent some time in solitude before actually getting married. Because if you don't understand yourself, forget about understanding your partner. Right? And therefore, what we do in the world is we shy away from spending time alone. Yet that solitude, that time, discovering ourselves is very, very powerful. You can just shout out, when people try to establish a relationship with each other or desire to have a relationship with someone, what do you think attracts them to having a relationship with someone else? You can just shout because it will, and that will be. A common interest. You have a common interest with the person you're attracted to, and that creates an attraction. What else attracts people to each other? The personality of the person, their character, their qualities, the way they express themselves, their emotions. Respect, the sense of how they make you feel and the emotional connection you have between each other. Yes? Yes?
External physical beauty.
Thank you for saying what everyone was thinking, but no one wanted to say. They're beautiful, they look attractive, he's handsome, she's pretty, and therefore physical looks bring us together. Anything else? Wealth. Okay, yeah, now we're really getting to the substance of it. Yeah, they have wealth, they have possessions, they have some material achievement, they have succeeded in their life. Success is attractive. Wisdom. Yeah, you just wanted to get one up on him. Wisdom, yeah, definitely. They're intellectually smart and they stimulate you intellectually as well, isn't it? Sometimes you can be with someone, but they don't intellectually stimulate you. Yeah. Affection, yeah. And what brings affection? Love, yeah. What brings love? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot here. A feeling, yeah. Okay, I'll let you off the hook, yeah. Yeah, feeling, the way they make you feel, yeah, how your heart becomes like a butterfly when you're around them. Anyone else? Fame, yeah. When someone is famous, when someone is revered, when someone is sought after by so many people, it naturally brings an attraction within us, yeah. So, okay, yeah.
Act of service, doing something for the others.
Wow, amazing, yeah. So an exchange, that they've done something for you and you've done something for them, and that selflessness brings a bonding. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, generally there are different things which bring people together. Bodily looks, material achievements, emotional support, how someone makes you feel. And the confidence they give us in ourselves. Intellectual interest, how they stimulate us, open our minds, seem to show us into new ways of living. And then, spiritual essence, a deeper vision of that person. What the Bhagavad-gita basically explains is that as you go, the lower rungs of these things which bring us together are more and more temporary. So as you go lower, it's more temporary. As you rise higher, it's permanent. And therefore, in our relationships in this world, what's basically happening is that most people are connecting on the lower aspects. And because they're connecting on the lower aspects, people are not able to stay together, or even when they are together, they don't feel as though their hearts have really met and that they're really experiencing a deep, loving connection. But what happens is when we get to the higher aspects, and specifically spiritual essence, when we learn to connect with people on a spiritual level, when we learn to connect with divinity, and therefore see the divinity in other people, and then relate to them with that spiritual vision, then what happens is our relationship with them goes on a much, much deeper level. So what Krishna basically talks about in the middle of the Bhagavad-gita is bhakti yoga, or how to develop a sense of connection with the divine. And when you have a connection with the divine, then you're able to see that divinity in everyone around you. And when you then begin seeing people beyond their body, and even beyond their personality, to their actual spiritual essence, then what happens is you become more and more empowered to actually have a deep and meaningful relationship with someone, which is not just based on external things, which ultimately fade away and change with the waves of time. And so Krishna gives an incredible insight into how to actually find love. And what he says is, if you want to find love, then the first thing is spend some time alone. Spend some time alone, understand yourself, and in that solitude, connect with divinity. And when you spend that time alone, discovering yourself and discovering divinity, then when you go out into the world and try and have relationships with people, you'll see everything change. But most people don't know this. They're scared of loneliness. They go out into the world, they have relationships which then don't satisfy them, and it causes heartbreak. And so Krishna helps us to understand another approach to loving. And the final thing that Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad-gita, and this is in the final 6 chapters, he talks about letting go, jnana yoga, wisdom. In our life, there are things which, in our life you see everything changes, isn't it? Your health changes. The people around you change. Your fortunes change. The situation, the world situation around you changes. If you notice, life is basically constantly changing. Everything around us is actually constantly being destroyed. Let me ask you a question. Why do you think that's the case? Why do you think if there is a divinity, if there is some spiritual God out there, why is the world arranged in such a way, do you think, that everything seems to fade away in time? Do you think there could be some purpose behind that? What could that be teaching us about life? Any ideas? Anyone has? Yes?
I guess since you said like things like fade away as time goes on, more like I guess appreciate what you have, what you have it.
Okay, so you believe that like things fade away, but that helps us to appreciate things when we have it. Good answer. Yeah.
Everything is like a new phase, and if everything is the same, then you're also like what you were saying earlier. You're not like in this life. You're not like learning anything, or you're not like gaining any spiritual. Like if there's like multiple different things that like come your way, and like the past keeps fading away.
Oh, okay, yeah. You're constantly having new experiences which then uplift your understanding of life. So the world is constantly mutating to basically help us to elevate our understanding of life through new experiences.
Yes.
Is that so? Yeah, good point. Yeah.
To teach us to change what we invest our energies into.
To teach us to change what we invest our energies into. So you think the universe, everything fades away in time to teach us, don't invest time in this because it's temporary?
Yeah, if I continually put my energy into something that continues to degrade and wither, I should be able to remind myself and see that there's perhaps something else that's better to invest in that will last, that won't just wither.
Yeah, so maybe things fade away to remind us that is this the best place to invest your heart, your time, your energy? Yes.
Maybe for peace, like if you're constantly like in a state of holding on to things, if you're constantly in a state of holding on to things, you tend to get angry and bitter or stressful, right? So if you hold on to things for a very long time, you might combust. Like I'm just using that as an analogy, but you might combust. So that's why the purpose of like letting go, like as time goes on, like your soul is able to be more freer as time goes on. So maybe it's just a lesson in that way.
So just by when things fade away around us, then we're forced to be detached, and that creates an inner detachment, and that inner detachment gives us an immunity. So the external things fading away create an inner detachment. Is that? Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, yeah, last one.
Well, I think many of the people in this room are college students, and they are pursuing their careers. What was yours again? Business administration, and yours was? Business analytics. So, and computer science. I brought all these people to come close. And so, with all of these, so they're pursuing their relative careers, but there's always challenges, right? Like applying for jobs and trying not to get depressed if you don't get that job. So that could be a lesson in detachment.
Yeah.
However, I would like you to comment on that, if you would, about all these students that are pursuing their careers. What is your best recommendation for them?
I never had a proper job in my life.
Okay.
Just to be fully honest with you. I mean, I went to UCL, I studied at university, I studied computer science and management. I graduated. And when I was 21, I became a monk. So I never really worked in the world in that way. But I still do. I guess I have a job now as a career, as like teaching, sharing spiritual wisdom. My advice for people pursuing their career, I would say try to find a career in which you can combine your passion with your expertise and then use it for service. If you find a career for which you have a passion, in which you have expertise, and a career which is not just for selfish gain so that I can earn lots of money and have lots of things, but a career which can then also be used to make other people's lives better, then I think that kind of career is probably the best career advice I can give you. That's what I tried to do in my small, insignificant life. One of the reasons the ancient Bhagavad-gita tells us that everything fades away in life is to help us understand what is then actually real. If something fades away, then it means in essence it's not truly real, because the truth cannot be transient, the truth cannot be temporary, the truth can't come and go. And therefore, the Bhagavad-gita says the world is specifically designed in such a way that everything which is not you will eventually fade away. But what the Bhagavad-gita says is that the problem is, these are the very things that people identify with as them. We identify with our abilities, and therefore we think we're worth something because of my abilities. But then with time, you lose your ability. We think we're worth something because of our looks, but then the looks fade away. We think we're worth something because we're successful, but then someone becomes more successful than you. We think we're worth something because of our relationships with others, but then those relationships over time also change and fade away. And therefore, most people end up with an identity crisis, because everything that they base their self-worth on eventually fades away in the waves of time. And therefore, what the Bhagavad-gita says is that before all of these things are taken away by the inevitable waves of time, find a deeper thing, an eternal thing, a spiritual thing to hold on and identify with, because that's the essence of who you really are. But you can't grab onto that until you learn to let go of other things. If I asked you, what things do you feel in life we have to let go of in order to live the totality of life? You can just shout out and then I'll repeat it on the mic. Anyone? What do you have to let go of?
Our expectations.
Expectations. Okay.
Our fears.
Our fears.
Our pains.
Our pains.
Comfort.
Our comfort. Attitude.
Our ego.
Our ego.
Life experiences.
Our traumas from the past. You mean? Is that like that? It looks like these guys want to let go and you guys want to hold on. There's nothing coming from here, you know. Come on, guys, you got to let go. Yes. Comparisons, is that what you said?
Relationships.
Just came out with a really heavy one there, you know, like relationships. Wow, yeah, people. But we have to frame it. What does it mean? Like you have to let go of all relationships? But then I was talking about love. I was just talking about love and how the essence of life is to have relationships of love. So what do you mean when you say let go of relationships? Yeah.
I think what's meant is that when you feel love, the love is like an internal thing. It's an internal emotion, like a warmth coming from your mind. But what you're directing the love to is a temporary thing. That you don't hate the temporary thing for being temporary, but you acknowledge that it's temporary, but you still feel love. So the love can go towards any of the temporary things, but it's not because of them. It's just directed towards them.
Okay, wow. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, we can have questions and answers on that. That's a very insightful point. Yeah, there are things in our life, the Bhagavad-gita says, which are holding us back, which are limiting us, and which are not serving our purposes. Places. Some places you just have to remove yourself from them because they're not growth places, they're not supporting you, they're not empowering you. There are certain people in your life, toxic relationships, which are kind of just a big burden on our shoulders. Have you noticed? It's incredible how someone can be in a toxic relationship. They know it's not good for them. The other person knows it's not good, but somehow they keep holding on to each other and dragging each other down because people don't know the art of how to let go. There's sometimes a security in even holding on to a toxic relationship. Habits, very difficult to get rid of. They say even if you get rid of the H, there's still a bit left. And even if you get rid of an A, there's still a bit left. And even if you get rid of the B, it's still left. Situations, attitudes, character traits. So what Krishna does in the last 6 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita is he very much talks about detachment and how to learn that spirituality is not just what you grasp, the positive things, but learning to let go of that which is holding you back. And it's a great science, the science of detachment, which most people haven't really necessarily deeply explored. So in essence, you begin to now get a picture of why the Bhagavad-gita is such an empowering, a powerful book that can, relate to your life in the here and now. Sometimes people think of these spiritual books as like a good retirement plan, a good read for the retirement, because then you're getting close to, other worlds. So, No, it's the ultimate book which empowers your journey in the here and now. And so today we just talked a little bit about this. The Bhagavad-gita really teaches us how to live and not just exist. The Bhagavad-gita teaches us how to love, how to actually have deeper connections with people beyond just the superficial attraction that brings us together to something much, much deeper. And ultimately how to let go of things in this world which are holding you back, of things which are not allowing you to find your spiritual essence. And in this way, if you read the Bhagavad-gita, you will learn how to live, how to love, and how to let go. And in this way, you won't walk through this world, you will float through this world, because these are the beautiful things that are available to us. Thank you very much for your attention, your kindness, and for being patient and so participative. Thank you.